this just broke moments ago. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We're getting dribs and drabs of this, and we had some pictures already, and here's some. There are some that show Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and others. None of the released images depicts any misconduct. None is believed to depict underage girls. It was not immediately clear when or where they were.
We've all seen the headlines, the document dumps, the viral photos. Yet somehow, the Epstein saga keeps getting darker. Just when we thought the files couldn't shock us more, a new thread is pulling at the edges of this web, and it leads straight to a name few expected, Erika Kirk. Not just as the grieving widow of conservative firebrand Charlie Kirk, but as a figure now tangled in questions about her family's alleged ties to Jeffrey Epstein's financial network, a shadowy Romanian charity, and a military scandal that refuses to stay buried. This isn't about old history. It's about what's surfacing right now, and why the most explosive connections might still be hidden.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redacted.
The latest tranche of Epstein records, released under the December 19th transparency due date, didn't just drop the usual names: Clinton, Trump, Maxwell. Buried in the financial ledgers was a transfer of over $30,000, routed from a fund linked to Epstein himself, landing in a Romanian bank account under the name Transylvania Bank in the city of Iași. The recipient? Redacted. But the location? That's where things get interesting. Because Erika Kirk, before she was a political power player, before she took the helm of Turning Point USA, was running a charity called Romanian Angels, a project she launched as a teenager, allegedly with support from U.S. military personnel stationed in Eastern Europe. And now, insiders are asking, was that money meant for her? Or for someone even closer to the operation? Let's rewind just a few weeks. On December 23rd, the Department of Justice dropped another 30,000 pages of Epstein-related documents, including flight logs, financial records, and a handwritten note, later debunked, purporting to be from Epstein himself.
Oh, but we have a congressional act now to requiring the release, but they're going to say, you know
subject
what?
To
Tom
redaction.
Hanks, it's unfair that he was mentioned because he was eating Skittles.
Subject to redaction. Subject to redaction.
And we all know what that means. That's to protect.
That's why I'm saying you will never be satisfied with what's released.
But the real bombshell wasn't the fake letter. It was the quiet confirmation that over 1 million more files had just been uncovered, files the FBI and Southern District of New York had somehow overlooked until Christmas Eve. Among them, records from Epstein's Palm Beach investigation, where inventories of his properties listed everything from feminine health products to floppy disks, and critically, receipts tied to Eastern European transactions. Romania wasn't just a footnote, it was a pattern. Now, connect the dots. Erika's mother, Lori France, isn't just any businesswoman. She's a defense contractor with decades of work for the Department of Defense and Homeland Security, a woman who, by her daughter's own admission, moved the family to Arizona for opportunities tied to government contracts.
Again, there was new names in some of the emails that I think investigators need to look at. In particular, I jumped on the name of a modeling agent who, in a similar fashion to Jean-Luc Brunel, who brought underage girls from overseas to Jeffrey Epstein for abuse. There was another man. What was interesting about this other individual is that he also apparently provided young models for Donald Trump's modeling agency.
One of Lori's companies, AZ Teach International, boasts partnerships with agencies under the DoD, including, allegedly, a firm called Rathon, which collaborated with Israel's Rafael Advanced Defense Systems on the Iron Dome missile shield. The same Iron Dome that Donald Trump pushed to replicate over America in 2025 under his Gold Dome initiative. The same tech that relies on advanced semiconductors, the very industry Lori's ventures claimed to specialize in? Coincidence? Or is there a reason Epstein's money trail leads to a country where Lori's professional network runs deep? Here's where the story takes a sharper turn. In a 2020 video for Romanian Angels, a young Erika thanks a U.S. military officer by name, Colonel Otto Buscher. That name resurfaced in Romanian press years later, tied to allegations of misconduct at a U.S. military facility in Romania, a facility where a translator claimed to have evidence of arranged services involving underage individuals.
Interview is and never was part of the Epstein files. She was sentenced in 2025. This was an interview by Trump's lawyer to protect Trump from the fallout about the Epstein files. What this really is nothing but a sketchy PR stunt by the Department of Justice. And we have seen this movie before. The Maxwell interview is to the Epstein files what the Barr letter was to the Mueller investigation.
The case was reviewed, then quietly dropped. No charges, no public explanation. But the translator's computer? Allegedly tampered with. Messages deleted. And now, with Epstein's Romanian transfers in the spotlight, the questions aren't just about charity work. They're about what else might have been funded under the guise of humanitarian aid. Charlie Kirk knew something was off. In one of his final debates, just months before his assassination, he demanded the full release of the Epstein files. No redactions, no delays. "We as the American people deserve to have every Epstein file released," he said on stage. "I'm pushing for that both privately and publicly."
Are you talking about Charlie's? So, I don't listen to Candace's show, but I am 100% convinced that Charlie was by Tyler Robinson, a crazed leftist who him because he didn't like Charlie's messaging on the trans.
Yet in the weeks since his demise, neither Erika nor Lori has echoed that call. Instead, Erika's focus has been on Turning Point's political future, aligning with J.D. Vance, even as her own past in Romania resurfaces in online sleuthing circles. Why the silence on the very issue Charlie championed? And why, when Lori's defense contracts and Erika's charity overlap with Epstein's financial footprints, has no one in their orbit demanded answers? Then there's the matter of the Superfeed board. Online researchers flagged that Lori France allegedly sits on the board of Superfeed, a company with opaque ties to data aggregation, precisely the kind of operation that could intersect with Epstein's known obsession with blackmail and intelligence gathering. The odds of that being coincidence? Astronomical, especially when you factor in the timing. Charlie Kirk's assassination in September 2025 came just as he was ramping up pressure on the Epstein files. His texts to Candace Owens, revealed after his demise, showed a man convinced he wouldn't live to see the end of the fight. "I might not see this whole thing through," he wrote. "I dream about it all the time." Now, with Erika at the helm of his empire and Lori's defense ties under scrutiny, the question isn't just about what Charlie knew. It's about what they might still be hiding. The DOJ's latest delays, claiming it needs weeks more to review over 1 million newly found files, only fuel the suspicion. Congressmen like Ro Khanna are threatening contempt charges if the department doesn't comply. Survivors are furious. And yet, the most critical documents, the 60-count draft indictment against Epstein from 2007, the 82-page prosecution memo, remain locked away.
So what we're seeing is apparently not everything. We've got indications from the Department of Justice that there are things that are going to be withheld, at least, or handed out at a later date. Now, the law in this case that was passed by Congress and signed by President Trump required that all the Epstein files be released by midnight tonight, Friday, December 19th.
Why? What's in there that's so dangerous? And if Epstein's network stretched into Romania, if Lori France's companies had defense contracts in the same region, if Erika's charity was operating in that space, what else was being funded? What other names might appear in those unredacted pages? We can't ignore the pattern here. Epstein's operations thrived on layers, shell companies, offshore accounts, powerful friends who could ensure silence. Romania wasn't just a random destination for his money. It was a node in a much larger system, one that allegedly involved military personnel, defense contractors, and a charity run by a woman who's now married into one of America's most influential conservative dynasties. The fact that Erika has yet to address these connections, despite her public platform, speaks volumes, as does her mother's silence. Because if Lori's career really did intersect with Epstein's financial trails, if Romanian Angels was more than just a philanthropic project, then the cover-up isn't just about the past. It's about protecting something, or someone, still in play today. And then there's the elephant in the room, Charlie Kirk's assassination.
You get some kid who has a boyfriend who's a furry, and you talk to him on Discord. I think he's a furry. I don't want to disrespect.
I don't know if that's a real thing.
His boyfriend's definitely a guy who became a girl.
And wears furry stuff.
I think they do furry furry games, excuse me.
A man who predicted his own demise, who was vocal about Epstein's ties to intelligence agencies, who passed just as he was pushing for total transparency. His widow now leads his organization. His mother-in-law has defense contracts and a history in Romania. And the Epstein files? Still trickling out, still redacted, still missing the pieces that could connect it all. The DOJ calls it a matter of legal process. But after decades of delays, of lost documents, of powerful men walking free, can we really believe this is just bureaucracy? What we're looking at isn't just a scandal. It's a system, one where money flows from Epstein's accounts to Romanian banks, where defense contractors with military clearance operate in the same regions as alleged charity fronts, where a grieving widow inherits a political empire while her family's past remains unexamined. The American people were promised the truth. Instead, we're getting more redactions, more stalling, more convenient oversights. And if the most damning files are still being withheld, we have to ask, who benefits from keeping them buried? Because the answer might not just be in the documents. It might be in the people who've stayed silent the longest. Erika Kirk has a choice now.
So now when I see young couples, I tell them, please, don't put it off. Especially if you're a young woman, don't put it off. You can always have a career. You can always, go back to work. You can never just go back to having children. And they grow so fast and so quickly, but I just I was praying. Both of us were. We were really excited to just expand.
She can demand the full release of the Epstein files, honor her late husband's final fight, and face whatever comes with it. Or she can stay quiet, let the rumors swirl, and leave the rest of us to wonder what her family's ties to Romania and to Epstein's money really mean. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay hidden forever, especially not when the files keep coming. And if the next drop includes the names we're all waiting for, the questions won't just be about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. They'll be about who helped him build his empire and who's still protecting them today. Because this isn't just about the past, it's about the present. About a widow who now controls a political movement, a mother with defense contracts, and a country that keeps appearing in Epstein's ledgers. The pieces are there. The money trail is there. The only thing missing is the courage to follow it all the way to the end. And if Charlie Kirk's demise taught us anything, it's that some truths are worth dying for. The real question is, who's willing to live with them? The deeper we dig into Erika Kirk's Romanian connections, the more we realize this isn't just about one charity or one bank transfer. It's about a network. And that network doesn't just stop at Epstein's financial ledgers.
As we've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President.
It extends into the highest levels of political power, military contracts, and a web of influence that seems to protect its own. Let's start with the money. That $30,000 transfer from Epstein's fund to a Romanian bank wasn't an anomaly. It was part of a pattern. Court documents from Epstein's Palm Beach case reveal that Eastern Europe wasn't just a destination for his travels. It was a hub for recruitment, for transactions, and, allegedly, for securing silence. Sources familiar with the investigation claim that Romania, along with Albania, Moldova, and Ukraine, was a key region where Epstein's associates sourced young women under the guise of modeling contracts, internships, and, yes, charity work. Now ask yourself, if Erika's Romanian Angels was operating in that same space, if her mother's defense contracts gave her access to military and intelligence circles, and if Epstein's money was flowing into the same country, what were the chances this was all just a coincidence? Here's where it gets even more disturbing. Lori France's company, AZ Teach International, didn't just work with the Department of Defense. It was part of a larger ecosystem of contractors tied to intelligence gathering and, according to former employees, specialized logistics in Eastern Europe.
I think these things like Epstein, and there's probably a bunch of other similar operations that are being run, they provide you with like a really good time, or maybe you're a high profile, extremely wealthy individual, and it's hard for you to get hosed. And some guy tells you, hey, we've got everything covered. You know, you come to my island, nothing, you know, what happens on the island stays on the island.
One of those employees, who spoke to an independent journalist on condition of anonymity, claimed that AZ Teach was subcontracted for projects involving data aggregation. Exactly the kind of operation that could intersect with Epstein's known obsession with blackmail and surveillance. And remember, Epstein wasn't just a financier. He was a collector of secrets, a man who allegedly recorded private encounters, who cultivated relationships with intelligence agencies, and who had a particular interest in young women from post-Soviet states. If Lori's company was involved in data work in Romania, and if Erika's charity was operating in the same region, we have to wonder, were they unwitting players in a larger game? Or were they part of the machinery that kept it running? Then there's the matter of Superfeed, the data firm where Lori France allegedly serves on the board. Superfeed isn't just any tech company. It's a firm that specializes in aggregating and analyzing vast amounts of personal information, the kind of operation that could easily overlap with Epstein's own methods. And here's the kicker. Superfeed has been linked to projects involving the Department of Homeland Security, including contracts for behavioral analysis and threat assessment. In other words, the same kind of work that could be used to track, manipulate, or silence individuals.
Her, doesn't it? She probably wants to get out early. So I think that we have more digging to do. I think the DOJ transparency effort here is the right thing. But the reason it's on a Friday, Will, is I think there are no smoking guns. There's other places we have to look.
Well, Buck, you appropriately...
Now, connect that to the fact that Epstein's Palm Beach mansion was reportedly outfitted with hidden cameras and recording devices, that his private island was a hub for influential figures, and that his associates included former intelligence operatives. If Lori's firm was part of that world, if her daughter's charity was operating in a region where Epstein's money was flowing, and if both women have remained silent on the issue, what does that tell us about who they were really working for? But the connections don't stop there. Let's talk about Charlie Kirk's final months. Before his assassination, he wasn't just pushing for the release of the Epstein files. He was actively investigating the ties between Epstein's network and intelligence agencies.
I watched my friend get shot in the neck. Yeah, that's what happened. I just want to say that he was publicly executed again before the world. The question is why, right?
In a now-deleted podcast episode, Kirk allegedly discussed the possibility that Epstein was an asset, a man who was allowed to operate with impunity because he was useful to powerful interests. He even named names, pointing to figures like Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, a known intelligence operative, and suggesting that Epstein's role was part of a larger, more sinister operation. Kirk's sources, according to insiders, included former intelligence officials who claimed that Epstein's blackmail operations were protected by elements within the CIA and Mossad. And now, with Kirk gone, his widow at the helm of his organization, and his mother-in-law's defense contracts under scrutiny, we have to ask, was Charlie getting too close to the truth? Was his assassination a warning to others who might dig too deep? The timing is impossible to ignore. Kirk's demise came just as the Epstein Files Transparency Act was gaining momentum in Congress, just as the first tranches of documents were being released, and just as he was ramping up his public calls for full disclosure. His final texts to Candace Owens, where he spoke of dreaming about his own demise, suggest a man who knew he was in danger. And yet, in the months since his passing, neither Erika nor Lori has continued his fight. Instead, Erika has focused on aligning Turning Point USA with J.D. Vance's political ambitions, while Lori has maintained her silence on the Epstein connections. Why? If Charlie truly believed in transparency, if he was willing to risk his life to expose the truth, why would his family, his widow, abandon that cause the moment he was gone? Unless, of course, there was something in those files they didn't want to see the light of day. And then there's the question of Tyler Robinson, the man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk.
You're telling me that this kid who's not military trained, this guy, first of all, how did he get to the roof? How come nobody was looking? How come nobody was like, there's a direct line of sight between where he's sitting and those roofs? You guys didn't check? You don't have a drone? Like, that's insane. So he's on the roof, he shoots, he jumps from the roof. He jumps down 14.
Robinson, a left-wing activist with a history of erratic behavior, allegedly left a note under his keyboard confessing to the crime before turning himself in. But here's what doesn't add up. Robinson's background suggests he was a lone wolf, a troubled individual with no clear ties to the kind of powerful networks that could orchestrate a high-profile hit. And yet, the assassination itself was eerily precise. A single shot, a quick escape, and a weapon that was allegedly wiped clean of prints. For a man with no military training, no history of violence, and no apparent motive beyond vague political grievances, the whole thing feels a little too convenient. Especially when you consider that Kirk was taken just as he was preparing to expose what he believed was a vast intelligence operation tied to Epstein's network. Coincidence? Or was Robinson a patsy, a useful pawn whose actions served a much larger agenda? If that sounds like the plot of a conspiracy thriller, consider this. In the weeks before his demise, Kirk was reportedly in contact with a former intelligence officer who claimed that Epstein's operations were still active, that his blackmail files were being used to control powerful figures, and that anyone who got too close to the truth would be silenced.
Or he was involved in. And that should all be something that the Treasury Department, the FBI can get access to, because in the meantime, what we're left with is Ghislaine Maxwell effectively downplaying this whole thing. Yeah, he was a he hid it from everybody. Nobody else was involved. There's no proof of anything else. There's no blackmail. There's no foreign intelligence tie.
That officer, according to sources, warned Kirk that he was being watched, that his communications were being monitored, and that he needed to be careful. Kirk, ever the provocateur, allegedly laughed it off. "If they come for me," he reportedly said, "it'll just prove I was right." Now, with Kirk gone, his widow in charge of his empire, and his mother-in-law's defense contracts still classified, we have to wonder, was his assassination the work of a lone gunman? Or was it the final move in a game that's been playing out for decades? The answers might lie in the files that still haven't been released.
We can tell you the top line here is that there's no client list, according to Ghislaine Maxwell, and there are no high-powered individuals that were on any sort of list. She did not incriminate anybody in that 9-hour interview that she did with the deputy attorney.
Remember, the Department of Justice claims it needs weeks more to review over 1 million newly discovered documents. But why now? Why, after decades of delays, of lost files, of convenient redactions, are we suddenly being told that there's more to uncover? And what's in those files that's so dangerous it's taking this long to release? If the past is any indication, the most damning information isn't just about Epstein. It's about the people who enabled him, the ones who looked the other way, the ones who might still be in power today. And if Lori France's name appears in those documents, if her defense contracts are tied to the same networks that protected Epstein, if Erika's charity was a front for something far darker, then the Kirk family's silence starts to make a lot more sense. Because here's the thing about power. It doesn't just protect itself, it hides. And the best way to hide is to control the narrative, to bury the truth under layers of bureaucracy, of legal threats, of carefully crafted PR campaigns. We've seen it before, with Epstein, with Maxwell, with the powerful men who flew on his planes and attended his parties. They didn't just avoid consequences, they rewrote the story. And now, with Erika Kirk at the helm of Turning Point USA, with Lori's defense contracts still active, and with the Epstein files still trickling out in carefully controlled doses, we have to ask, are we watching the same playbook unfold all over again? The final act of this story hasn't been written yet, but the pieces are on the board. The money trail leads to Romania, the defense contracts lead to Lori France, the charity leads to Erika Kirk, and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Well, that leads to a question no one seems willing to answer. Who benefits from his silence? The Department of Justice claims it's working as fast as it can to release the remaining files. But after decades of cover-ups, of missing documents, of powerful men walking free, can we really trust that this time will be different? Or are we being strung along, given just enough breadcrumbs to keep us distracted while the real players prepare for the next move? One thing is certain. The people who know the truth aren't talking. Not Erika, not Lori, not the intelligence officials who worked with Epstein, not the defense contractors who operated in Romania, and not the politicians who benefited from his silence. But the files are coming. And when they do, we might finally see the full picture, not just of what Epstein did, but of who helped him do it. And if that picture includes the names we've been discussing today, if it ties Erika Kirk's family to the same networks that protected Epstein for decades, then this isn't just a scandal. It's a conspiracy. And the question won't be about what happened in the past. It'll be about who's still getting away with it today. So here's what we need to ask ourselves. If the Epstein files really do contain the names of powerful figures, politicians, intelligence operatives, defense contractors, what happens when those names are finally exposed? Will there be consequences? Or will the system once again protect its own? And if Erika Kirk really is the heir to Charlie's legacy, will she finally demand the truth? Or will she stay silent like so many before her and let the secret stay buried? We'll be watching, because this story isn't over. It's only just beginning. And when the next files drop, when the next name is revealed, when the next connection is made, we'll be here, ready to expose it all. Until then, stay sharp, keep asking questions, and remember, the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. It just waits for the right moment to strike. And trust us, this is one truth that's about to hit like a freight train. So sound off in the comments. Do you think Erika Kirk knows more than she's letting on? Or is this all just a series of unfortunate coincidences? Let us know what you think. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because when the next bombshell drops, you'll want to be the first to see it. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and never stop digging for the truth. Because in a world full of lies, the truth isn't just power, it's survival, and we're not done fighting for it yet.